In the pre-dawn hours of June 21, 2025, the world bore witness to an event that irrevocably altered the perception of the ongoing conflict in the Middle East. A ballistic missile, launched from Iranian territory, successfully penetrated Israel's Iron Dome missile defense system and struck the heart of Tel Aviv. It marked a chilling first, an Iranian missile not only reaching Israeli soil, but also directly impacting a densely populated urban area, leaving a trail of devastation in its wake. According to the latest, grim statistics released by the Israeli Ministry of Health, upwards of 3,000 individuals sustained injuries, while a heartbreaking 16 lives were lost. Furthermore, dozens of buildings were leveled, reduced to rubble and shattered memories. The districts of Bat Yam, Ramat Gan, and Tikva found themselves at the very epicenter of this calculated assault. It was here, amidst these vibrant communities, that the missile detonated between two residential complexes, triggering a catastrophic domino effect. Facades crumbled like sandcastles, raging fires erupted with terrifying speed, and power and communication lines snapped and fell, plunging neighborhoods into darkness and isolating them from the outside world. A palpable wave of panic swept through the streets as people desperately sought shelter, yet for too many, time simply ran out. Surveillance cameras captured the horrifying moment of impact, glass storefronts exploding outward in a shower of lethal shards, a thick cloud of dust and debris billowing into the sky, followed by a deafening boom that gave way to the piercing wail of air raid sirens. However, the public's attention was captivated not so much by the strike itself, but by the profoundly unsettling reaction of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. During a live broadcast intended to address measures for ensuring national security, the earth-shattering explosion reverberated behind him. The camera, cruelly, remained rolling, capturing the stark transformation of his countenance, his face drained of color, his voice cracking with barely suppressed emotion, his eyes clouding over for a fleeting, vulnerable moment. This singular, devastating image instantly went viral, circling the globe and sparking outrage. Mere hours later, he reappeared before the press, but instead of offering words of reassurance or outlining a plan to protect his citizens, he veered into a lament about a personal matter. His son had, yet again, postponed his wedding due to the escalating conflict. These tone-deaf remarks sent shockwaves rippling through Israeli society and far beyond. Social media platforms erupted with accusations of callous indifference to the suffering of ordinary people, a nation reeling from catastrophe while its leader appeared consumed by a private drama. Concurrently, a chaotic scene unfolded within the municipal services. Firefighters were overwhelmed, struggling to contain the inferno that consumed building after building. Dozens of rescue operations were underway at the blast site, with emergency responders desperately clawing through the debris in search of survivors. Many were trapped beneath the rubble, and countless others were rushed to hospitals in critical condition. Hundreds of families, displaced and traumatized, were evacuated to hastily converted shelters in schools and sports arenas, which became makeshift aid stations. But the tragedy in Tel Aviv transcends a mere localized attack. It stands as a brutal reckoning, the consequence of a strategic miscalculation. The attack was not random, it was a deliberate escalation that changed everything. It all began ominously a few days prior, amidst ongoing peace treaty negotiations in Washington, D.C., when Israeli air forces launched a daring strike against an Iranian research facility, allegedly connected to their contentious nuclear program. According to reports from both The Guardian and Al Jazeera, this particular facility was under the watchful gaze of the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA. This strike, therefore, was perceived as a blatant violation of existing international accords and a dangerous escalation of regional tensions. Iran's response was swift and decisive, demonstrating a calculated resolve. The launch of ballistic missiles formed a key element of the expansive response for Kermanshah operation. The operation's title was a Samba reference to the Iranian province that had previously suffered attacks from Israeli-manufactured drones, adding a layer of emotional weight to the retaliation. Reuters reported that the missile launch originated from a mobile platform strategically positioned in eastern Iran, near the city of Tarbaz. The missile traversed a distance exceeding 800 kilometers, boldly piercing the airspace of both Iraq and Jordan. Astoundingly, satellite data indicated that the air defense systems of these allied nations made no discernible attempt at interception. This astonishing failure led astute analysts to speculate that Iran had shrewdly exploited a window of opportunity, capitalizing on the US and NATO's preoccupation with the ongoing conflict in Ukraine and Eastern Europe. Despite official pronouncements of unwavering support for Israel emanating from the White House, the United States, in practice, appeared either unable or unwilling to intervene in the unfolding crisis. President Donald Trump, while asserting Israel's right to self-defense, also issued a veiled critique, cautioning them to carefully consider the ramifications of their decisions, thereby subtly implying Tel Aviv's culpability in the escalating situation. As evening descended, military experts engaged in fervent discussions regarding the perplexing phenomenon of how a ballistic missile could successfully penetrate the vaunted Iron Dome defense system. According to reports in the Israeli publication *Haaretz*, the air defense system was overwhelmed by a barrage of decoys launched a mere 3 minutes before the actual strike. This revealed that Iran's operation was meticulously planned, incorporating sophisticated diversionary tactics. An analyst at the Center for Strategic Studies in Jerusalem conceded with a hint of unease, no one anticipated this level of coordination and precision from Iran. The employment of electronic warfare and jamming capabilities likely contributed to the Iron Dome's failure. The immediate aftermath of the attack was nothing short of catastrophic. 65 buildings lay in ruins, dozens of vehicles were reduced to smoldering wreckage, and several urban districts were plunged into darkness due to power outages. Within the subsequent 12 hours, missions from the United Nations, the Red Cross, and humanitarian groups from the European Union descended upon Tel Aviv, although Israeli authorities attempted to restrict access to the epicenter of the devastation. Nevertheless, harrowing videos captured by local residents found their way into the media, portraying scenes of burning facades, crushed cars, and streets blanketed in ash and shattered glass, painting a grim picture of the human cost. The emotional impact on the civilian population was palpable, with widespread fear and uncertainty gripping the city. Thus, the attack of June 21 transcended the realm of a mere military action. It metamorphosed into a potent symbol, suggesting a profound shift in the balance of power in the volatile Middle East, leaving many to ponder the long-term geopolitical consequences of this audacious strike. For decades, the nation had basked in a sense of inviolability. However, that illusion shattered overnight as a stark reality intruded. The enemy possessed the capability to strike not at the periphery, but at the very core, the heart of the nation, the capital, and even its most fortified districts. Disturbingly, this initial assault was merely a harbinger of what was to come, a prelude to further devastation. Amidst the mangled structures, the twisted metal of incinerated vehicles, and the palpable traces of raw panic scarring the streets of Tel Aviv, a profound tragedy began to surface. This calamity shook even those hardened souls accustomed to the grim daily reports of casualties. In the Tikva neighborhood, on A Street, amidst the rubble of a collapsed residential building, rescue workers unearthed the remains of 4 individuals, victims of the catastrophic disintegration of the 20th floor. Among them was Ivita Smilovitz, a resilient octogenarian of 85 years, a Holocaust survivor, a former history professor, and a dedicated community activist. For years she had actively participated in the educational program, in memory of genocide victims. Her name resonated with a chilling silence throughout Israeli society. The woman who had miraculously escaped the clutches of Auschwitz, who had painstakingly rebuilt her life in Israel, and lovingly raised 3 grandchildren, had perished in her own apartment. The cause of death was the devastating impact of a direct missile strike. This event epitomized the cruel irony of modern warfare. Those who had endured the unspeakable horrors of the previous century were now being eradicated in a fresh surge of violence. A surge initiated not from the ground up, but from the top down, born of calculated political decisions. The Smilovitz family's tragedy was but one thread in the vast tapestry of horror unfolding across Israel. In the northern Galilean city of Tamra, on that same night, another Iranian projectile pulverized a residential building, claiming the lives of a family of 4. A mother, her 2 daughters, and their cousin. Amidst the wreckage, rescue teams unearthed children's toys, shattered furniture, and scattered books, poignant remnants of lives abruptly extinguished. Neighbors, gathering near the ruins, expressed their disbelief and sorrow. They were innocent, they lamented. They didn't even realize Israel had initiated a new war. Their innocence was a stark contrast to the calculated aggression that had ended their lives. In Ramat Gan, a densely populated district near Tel Aviv, a missile struck a residential area, igniting a raging inferno that consumed 3 homes completely. An additional 9 buildings sustained partial damage. According to the municipal authorities, 117 individuals were rendered homeless, deprived of access to essential resources such as food and medical care. Emergency responders toiled relentlessly throughout the night, extricating survivors from the debris. Among those rescued was an 11-year-old girl, tragically orphaned, having lost both her parents and her younger brother in the devastating attack. The emotional toll on the rescue workers was immense, as they confronted the human cost of the conflict. Initially, Israeli media outlets attempted to downplay the magnitude of the tragedy. However, by daybreak, unfiltered eyewitness accounts, captured on smartphones and disseminated via Telegram, TikTok, and Facebook, had flooded the digital landscape. A harrowing video, recorded from a mobile phone, documented the precise moment when a missile pierced the roof of a residential complex, forever altering the lives of those within. The graphic footage served as an undeniable testament to the scale of the devastation, shattering any attempts at obfuscation. The next scene unfolds in a panorama of sheer terror, scores of residents fleeing in absolute panic, instinctively shielding their heads, desperately seeking refuge behind vehicles, and within the cold, concrete confines of underground parking garages. Fury and disbelief saturated the comment sections under the videos capturing this harrowing reality. "They are not protecting us. We have been abandoned," echoed the anguished voices of the residents online, their words laced with a palpable sense of betrayal. The reaction of the inhabitants of Rishon LeZion, another city directly in harm's way, was particularly heart-wrenching. In this location, a missile struck a multi-story residential building, leading to the tragic loss of 2 lives and leaving 17 individuals injured, some grievously. Some suffered agonizing burns, while others sustained severe traumatic brain injuries. Volunteers from Magen David Adom, MDA, overwhelmed by the sheer volume of casualties, struggled to provide aid. Desperate and anxious, people formed long, agonizing lines at mobile aid stations, frantically attempting to locate their loved ones amidst the chaos and devastation. Against this backdrop of suffering and fear, a massive wave of public outcry erupted. For the first time in a long while, the chants and slogans weren't emanating from Gaza or the West Bank, but from the very heart of Israel itself. The voices rose in unison, demanding, "Netanyahu on trial, we don't want your war, enough fear, give us back our safety." Young people took to the streets of Tel Aviv, brandishing placards that vehemently accused the government of prioritizing political ambitions above the fundamental lives and well-being of its citizens. Israeli society, which had long held a deep-seated belief in the invulnerability of its own country, now found itself confronted with a shocking, new reality, the kind of damage and destruction that they had only witnessed in Gaza for decades had now become their own personal nightmare. The paradox was stark and undeniable. A nation that had for years operated on the principle of preemptive strikes now found itself directly in the crosshairs. The one who had previously been the target of airstrikes now stood as a fully empowered player on the field of military technology. On the international stage, criticism also intensified noticeably. The United Nations formally demanded an independent and impartial investigation into potential violations of international humanitarian law. However, the positions adopted by Turkey, Qatar, and even Indonesia were particularly striking and unsettling. These nations not only condemned the Israeli strikes against Iran, but also openly voiced their support for Iran's right to retaliatory measures in the context of self-defense. The Al-Quds newspaper went so far as to describe the attack on Tel Aviv as a moment of balanced justice. President of Iran, Ibrahim Raisi, speaking at a conference in Tehran, proclaimed, "We do not seek war. But if war is initiated from the other shore, we will respond in such a way that the enemy will forever remember the consequences of aggression." His pronouncements were met with enthusiastic applause within the hall and widespread support across social media platforms throughout the Arab world. Thus, the victims of that single, devastating night became more than just cold statistics. Instead, they were transformed into compelling arguments in a deeply emotional debate over who has truly suffered from the reckless and potentially catastrophic decisions made by political leaders. Their pain and loss served as a stark reminder of the human cost of conflict and the urgent need for a peaceful resolution. Where once the world observed Palestine with a sense of tragedy, it now regards Tel Aviv with a chilling sense of foreboding. A cautionary tale has unfolded, revealing that even the most fortified nation cannot shield itself from the repercussions of transgressing the boundaries of acceptable conduct. The palpable anxiety gripping the Israeli populace is impossible to ignore. The disconcerting failure of the Iron Dome has ignited a fervent debate among military analysts, political figures, and the Israeli citizenry alike. The air defense system, a source of national pride and unwavering confidence for the Israeli state, has suffered a mortifying defeat. Juxtaposed against the advanced technical specifications of Iran's latest generation of ballistic missiles, namely the Khorramshahr 4, the deathful Iron Dome proved incapable of intercepting the full spectrum of incoming threats, especially when faced with a saturated barrage employing sophisticated decoys. The implications are deeply unsettling. This grim assessment is precisely how the Israeli Institute for National Security paints the picture in its stark report, published on June 23, 2025. The report chillingly details that within a mere 2 minutes, over 35 projectiles were launched towards central Israel, encompassing ballistic missiles, kamikaze UAVs, and thermal-use meticulously designed to mimic the trajectories of genuine ordnance. The Iron Dome air defense system was, quite simply, overwhelmed by the sheer volume and complexity of the attack. Of the 11 actual ballistic missiles launched, a harrowing 7 successfully reached their designated targets. Most alarmingly, a breach occurred right in the heart of Tel Aviv, a sector previously considered to be completely protected by an impenetrable air defense umbrella, where every square meter was believed to be under vigilant watch. Eyewitness video recordings corroborate this devastating truth. The system engaged, but its effectiveness was demonstrably incomplete. Israeli military officials contend that the dense urban environment, coupled with the exceedingly short reaction time, prevented the interception of a portion of the incoming missiles. Critically, the system is fundamentally not designed to counter hypersonic velocities, a capability that, according to emerging intelligence, Iran now possesses. This revelation has sent tremors of concern throughout the defense establishment. Furthermore, disconcerting theories have surfaced suggesting the deployment of the Fatah-2 complex, a suspected hypersonic missile purportedly capable of traversing over 2,000 kilometers, with a minimal signature in both the infrared and radar spectra. While Tehran has refrained from officially acknowledging the deployment of such advanced weaponry, a report published by James Defense Weekly indicates a high probability that Iran has been actively testing a novel delivery system based on cutting-edge solid propellant technologies. According to Eli Bahram, former advisor to the IDF on air defense matters, Israel is now confronted with a stark new reality, one in which legacy defense systems no longer provide an absolute guarantee of security. In the pages of the Jerusalem Post he lamented, "It's as if we've been training on a firing range all this time, only to be suddenly thrust into a real war." The analogy is both poignant and deeply disturbing. This security breakdown has ignited a wave of profound distrust and disillusionment within Israeli society. A recent poll conducted by Channel 12 revealed that a staggering 61% of Israelis no longer have faith in the effectiveness of the nation's air defenses. This crisis of confidence represents a significant challenge to the government and the military, demanding immediate and decisive action to restore public trust and bolster national security. The future of Israel's defense strategy hangs in the balance. The failure of the Iron Dome to provide adequate defense has ignited a firestorm of public outrage within Israel. Astonishingly, a substantial 48% of the populace are now demanding the immediate resignation of the Minister of Defense and the commencement of a full parliamentary inquiry. A pervasive sense of betrayal and bewilderment grips the nation, as people vociferously question the whereabouts of the billions of dollars purportedly invested in the Iron Dome, given its apparent inability to safeguard even the capital city. The public is demanding accountability and searching for answers in this moment of crisis. In light of this escalating crisis, Israel has urgently requested emergency military assistance from the United States. President Donald Trump, who was in Texas attending a meeting with the National Guard, responded by assuring Israel that America would not abandon it in its hour of need. However, he cautiously stipulated that any military aid must be proportionate to strategic expediency. This pronouncement has triggered a mixed response within Israel, where, until now, unwavering U.S. support had been considered almost automatic. This conditional support has sowed seeds of doubt and uncertainty among some Israeli officials. In stark contrast, an atmosphere of jubilation permeated Iran. State-controlled channels, such as IRIB, broadcast graphic footage of the aftermath of the attacks, devastated buildings, smoldering vehicles, and frantic rescue operations. The broadcasts were accompanied by captions proclaiming, "Revenge for Kermanshah." And this is only the beginning. Analysts in Tehran are hailing the breach of Israel's air defense system as a watershed moment, exposing the vulnerability of their longtime adversary. The sense of triumph is palpable as they celebrate what they perceive as a strategic victory. Meanwhile, within Israeli military circles, a frantic effort is underway to modernize the country's air defense capabilities. The David Sling system, designed to intercept medium-range rockets, is being deployed at an accelerated pace in southern regions. However, even this system, according to expert assessments, may prove inadequate to counter multi-layered, saturation attacks. Negotiations are ongoing to procure the American THAAD system, but its installation and adaptation would require months, the luxury Israel may not have. The urgency of the situation is further compounded by the limited time available. Adding to the atmosphere of crisis, a rapid evacuation of government institutions from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem and Beersheba has commenced. According to reports in the Times of Israel, the archives of the Ministry of Defense and portions of the Mossad Analytical Center were relocated on the night of June 22. This extraordinary measure underscores the government's profound lack of confidence in the safety and security of the capital region. The move is a clear indication of the government's heightened anxiety. Consequently, the breach of the Iron Dome transcends a mere technical failure. It represents a profound political and military humiliation that has shaken the foundations of Israel's strategic thinking. What was once regarded as impenetrable has been proven vulnerable. What was once presented as the nation's shield has become a symbol of its susceptibility. And while the military frantically seeks novel solutions, the enemy has already demonstrated its capacity not only to strike, but also to undermine the very sense of security at the heart of the nation. In the wake of these catastrophic strikes and the failure of its air defense system, the Israeli government has initiated a concerted effort to exert control not only over the ground situation, but also over the narrative being disseminated to the public. From the evening of June 22, 2025, a pall of unease descended upon the nation as the government curtailed the broadcasting of several international news outlets, including Al Jazeera, Press TV, and TRT World. The official justification cited the dissemination of panic and the falsification of information, a claim that rang hollow to many. In reality, it quickly became apparent to the citizenry that this was a desperate attempt to mask the true magnitude of the devastation that had befallen the country. Adding fuel to the fire, on that very same day, the Israeli Ministry of Communications issued an ominous decree. This directive explicitly forbade the publication of any photographic or video evidence originating from the impact sites of the rocket attacks without prior authorization from the Army Censorship Committee. This blatant act of censorship, a stark departure from established norms, was openly denounced by journalists from esteemed publications such as Haaretz and the Times of Israel, a chilling first in recent memory. A fresh wave of profound distrust washed over the nation, eroding the already fragile confidence in the government. Even media outlets typically aligned with the state began to subtly suggest that the official figures regarding the dead and wounded were deliberately being understated, amplifying the sense of betrayal. In spite of these repressive measures, the digital realm of social media remained a conduit for unfiltered reality. Witness accounts, captured in raw and visceral videos, continued to circulate widely. One particular clip, depicting the catastrophic collapse of a high-rise building in the heart of Tel Aviv following a direct rocket hit, went viral with alarming speed. The haunting soundtrack of the video, the terrified screams of children, the fervent prayers of women, the inferno-consuming vehicles below amplified the horror. This single, devastating piece of footage garnered over 40 million views in a mere 12 hours. Despite the concerted efforts of the Israeli authorities to scrub it from the national internet domain, the video was instantaneously picked up by major international news organizations, including France 24, Al Arabiya, RT, and The Independent, further exposing the extent of the crisis to the global community. Predictably, this unfolding catastrophe triggered swift and forceful political repercussions. Heated debates erupted within the Knesset, focusing on accountability for the palpable failure of national defense and the staggering loss of civilian life. The opposition party vehemently demanded the immediate establishment of an independent parliamentary commission to investigate the actions undertaken by the Netanyahu government between June 15 and June 21. It was during this critical period that strikes against Iranian targets had been launched, precipitating the devastating retaliatory attacks. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Netanyahu stubbornly maintained his unwavering stance on the necessity of confronting the perceived Iranian threat. He vehemently accused Tehran of sponsoring terrorism and vowed a forceful and decisive response. However, within the upper echelons of political power, a growing chorus of voices began to advocate for restraint and de-escalation. Minister of Justice Yuli Edelstein articulated the growing sentiment of unease, stating with stark clarity, "We cannot afford to wage war on two fronts simultaneously, against missiles, and against our own citizens. Adding to the pressure, a poll conducted by the newspaper Maariv revealed that a significant majority, 62% of Israeli citizens, believe that the nation should urgently pursue negotiations, potentially with the mediation of Turkey or the United Nations. On the international stage, Israel found itself increasingly isolated and vulnerable. While staunch support from Washington, D.C., remained intact, a growing number of Western nations began to distance themselves from Israel's actions. Germany, France, and Spain issued formal statements urging Israel to exercise maximum restraint and refrain from any actions that could further escalate the already volatile situation. The specter of a wider conflict loomed large, casting a long shadow of uncertainty over the region. The international fallout from recent events has intensified, with Brazil's foreign minister pointedly accusing Tel Aviv of actively destabilizing the region. Even India, traditionally an ally of Israel, adopted a stance of neutrality, issuing a statement urging restraint on all sides. This carefully worded response underscored the growing international unease. However, the reactions from Turkey and Malaysia were markedly more severe. President Erdogan, during a fiery address in Ankara, proclaimed, "We are witnessing a nation, once presuming itself untouchable, now experiencing the very pain it has inflicted upon others for years." His words conveyed a sense of grim satisfaction, highlighting the perceived karmic consequences of Israel's actions. Simultaneously, in Jakarta, demonstrations erupted outside the Israeli embassy, with protesters vehemently demanding an end to the blockade of Gaza and condemning the recent attacks on Iranian soil. Israel's attempts to deflect attention by emphasizing the purported threat from Iran are increasingly perceived as a transparent effort to evade responsibility for its own provocative strikes. International analysts from esteemed organizations like AS and CSIS Group have voiced their concerns, asserting that Israel's actions in attacking the research facility in Bushehr, particularly during ongoing peace negotiations, were illogical and irresponsible, as they directly provoked a retaliatory strike targeting civilian populations. This assessment painted a picture of recklessness and a disregard for diplomatic efforts. Against this backdrop of international condemnation, fissures began to appear within the Israeli power structure. A significant blow came with the resignation of Air Force Chief of Staff General Tomer Bar, who declared that he could no longer serve under political directives that lacked a foundation in sound defense doctrine. His departure served as a stark signal to others within the military and government. Subsequently, 2 deputy defense ministers submitted requests for temporary suspension of their duties, further underscoring the deepening crisis within the national security apparatus. This internal turmoil suggested a profound lack of confidence in the current leadership and its strategic decision-making. In tandem with these internal challenges, public pressure intensified dramatically. Protests are now a daily occurrence outside the Knesset, Tel Aviv City Hall, and the Ministry of Defense. Chants of "We are not targets," "Give us back the truth," and "Where was the army?" echoed through the streets, reflecting a growing sense of betrayal and abandonment. The protests were particularly intense in Ramat Gan and Bat Yam, the areas most severely impacted by the retaliatory strikes, where numerous homes were reduced to rubble. The grief and anger were palpable as residents surveyed the devastation. Thus, the Iranian response has evolved into not just a military engagement, but also an informational, political, and profoundly moral reckoning for Israel. The nation now finds itself in a precarious position, with the state apparatus seemingly unable to manage the consequences of its own decisions, and its citizens grappling with the ramifications of their prolonged silence. While the public demands accountability and the international community calls for de-escalation, the government seems to offer only hollow justifications, their voices drowned out by the wailing of sirens and the collective grief pervading the ruined streets of its cities. Alongside the tangible military and political setbacks, Israel is now confronting consequences that were long ignored within the corridors of power, economic instability, and strategic paralysis. Tel Aviv, once a vibrant symbol of prosperity and innovation, now bore the haunting resemblance of a city ravaged by catastrophe, its future uncertain, and its spirit wounded. The financial district nestled within Dizengoff Tzedek, a veritable hub for Israel's burgeoning startup scene, influential investment funds, and multinational technology giants, found itself reeling from the impact of nearby explosions. Shop fronts were shattered, cars were reduced to charred husks, power outages plunged the area into darkness, and a palpable sense of panic gripped the employees caught in the maelstrom. The atmosphere was thick with fear and uncertainty. According to a report by Bloomberg, a staggering sum exceeding $28 billion in private capital was hastily withdrawn from Israel in the 72 hours following the initial assault. This exodus represented the most significant capital flight witnessed in the past 15 years, a chilling indicator of the profound economic shockwaves rippling through the nation. Concurrently, the stock prices of companies comprising the prestigious TA-125 index plummeted by a devastating 11.6%, marking the most severe market downturn since the tumultuous year of 2020. The trading day on June 24, 2025, was abruptly halted prematurely, an unprecedented measure not seen since the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, underscoring the gravity of the situation. The high-tech sector, a cornerstone of the Israeli economy, bore the brunt of the disruption. Prominent industry leaders such as Mobileye, NICE Systems, and Monday.com announced the temporary suspension of operations at their Tel Aviv-based offices. Intel and Nvidia implemented partial evacuations of their facilities, prioritizing the safety of their personnel. Furthermore, Amazon Web Services, AWS, which maintains a crucial data center in the suburb of Petah Tikva, made the difficult decision to temporarily restrict access to its Israeli servers, further compounding the operational challenges. Moody's, the renowned credit rating agency, estimated that the aggregate damage stemming from these disruptions to the IT infrastructure alone exceeded $480 million in a mere 48-hour period, a testament to the vulnerability of the digital ecosystem. Regrettably, the situation was further exacerbated by a growing reluctance among international partners to continue collaborative ventures. Investors hailing from Japan, South Korea, and Germany announced the temporary suspension of their participation in programs linked to Israel's innovation ecosystem and its defense industry, signaling a concerning erosion of international confidence. Adding insult to injury, Vertex Ventures, a prominent Singaporean venture capital fund, retracted a substantial $120 million funding commitment from an Israeli biotechnology startup, leaving the promising venture in a precarious position. Similarly, the European Investment Bank, EIB, put a freeze on loans earmarked for infrastructure development in the vicinity of Ben Gurion Airport, a critical transportation hub, further hindering economic recovery efforts. Concurrently, the nation's logistical arteries were effectively paralyzed. Container ships operated by major shipping lines like Maersk, CMA-CGM, and Master of Science ceased calling at the port of Ashdod II, Israel's second-largest port after Haifa. This drastic measure was prompted by the escalating risk of missile strikes, which had now extended their reach to encompass the entire coastline, posing an unacceptable threat to maritime operations. International insurance companies, including the venerable Lloyd's of London, declared their refusal to provide coverage for shipping risks within Israeli territorial waters, further isolating the nation's economy. The inevitable consequences included critical fuel shortages, delayed deliveries of essential food supplies, and a sharp increase in domestic market prices, creating a volatile and uncertain environment for consumers. The devastating impact on the Sarona market, a prominent shopping and exhibition center, garnered particular attention from global media outlets. The destruction of its central gallery, once a vibrant showcase of Israel's modern economy, transformed the market into a haunting symbol of collapse. Graphic images of debris, smoldering boutiques, and shattered restaurants were splashed across the front pages of newspapers and broadcast on television screens worldwide, painting a stark and unforgettable picture of the crisis gripping the nation. The sight of what was once a thriving hub of commerce reduced to rubble served as a powerful and unsettling reminder of the cost of conflict. In the wake of these disconcerting developments, the Israeli Minister of Tourism tendered his resignation, citing the utter impossibility of fulfilling his duties amidst a landscape of devastated infrastructure and a pervasive sense of insecurity. A profound sense of unease permeated the nation, amplified by the palpable absence of safety. Furthermore, experts contend that the economic blow inflicted upon Israel has proven even more devastating than the physical damage wrought by the rockets. While military installations can be rebuilt and modernized with relative ease, the erosion of confidence, particularly among the international business community, is a wound that takes years to heal, process fraught with uncertainty. Consequently, discussions have commenced within Israel regarding the establishment of a business support anti-crisis fund. However, given the nation's ballooning budget deficit, such measures are perceived by many as merely symbolic gestures, inadequate to address the magnitude of the crisis. The assault's repercussions extended far beyond the economic realm, significantly impacting strategic assets as well. The Native System facilities, the Nerve Center for Cyber Intelligence and Strategic Planning, suffered substantial communication disruptions, severely hampering their operational capabilities. As a result, a portion of analytical centers were compelled to relocate their operations to Jerusalem and even to Limassol, Cyprus, where reserve servers are strategically positioned, a testament to the gravity of the situation. Deeply concerned about potential follow-up strikes, the General Staff of the Israel Defense Forces, IDF, transferred a segment of their operations to subterranean bunkers in the vicinity of Ein Gedi, underscoring the heightened state of alert and the vulnerability felt throughout the defense establishment. All of these events starkly revealed that Israel's long-held image, as an unassailable technological superpower, had been irrevocably compromised, exposing a critical vulnerability. Iran had effectively demonstrated its capacity not only to intimidate, but also to cripple the economic engine of its adversary. This novel pressure tactic, a direct assault on logistics, business, and investment reputation, caught the West completely off guard. Nevertheless, the effectiveness of this strategy is undeniably apparent, sending shockwaves through international circles. Against this backdrop of escalating instability, international rating agencies have initiated a reassessment of Israel's credit rating, a move that could have far-reaching implications for the nation's financial stability. S&P and Fitch have already downgraded their outlook to negative, a decision that portends a potential increase in borrowing costs, further exacerbating the economic challenges facing the country. The Israeli Ministry of Finance has issued a stark warning of a probable recession as early as the second quarter of 2025, casting a shadow over the nation's economic prospects. Simultaneously, the export sector braces itself for a significant decline in orders, amplifying the sense of economic foreboding. Therefore, the strategic ramifications of Tehran's attack have transcended the boundaries of the military sphere, permeating every facet of Israeli society. The ensuing destruction, coupled with widespread panic, palpable fear, and a significant outflow of capital, have laid bare a critical weak point in Israel's model of resilience. Today, Tel Aviv is more than just a city that has endured the piercing wail of air raid sirens. It is a major center that has been stripped of its aura of invincibility, rendered vulnerable in a way never experienced before, its sense of security shattered. As the dust from the devastation began to settle, and the residents of Israel returned to the shattered remains of their homes, a chilling realization dawned upon them: the illusion of invincibility, which had long been the guiding principle of the nation's military and political elite, had been irrevocably shattered. The strikes on Tel Aviv, Bnei Brak, Ramleh, Bat Yam, and Rishon LeZion served as a grim reminder that, despite all the advanced technologies and enormous defense budgets, Israel remains vulnerable. A stark and unsettling truth. Israel now finds itself in a position of profound vulnerability, utterly unprepared for a novel form of warfare. This is not the conventional clash of military forces, but an insidious assault targeting the very foundations of the nation, its symbolic cornerstones, economic stability, and collective psychology. Indeed, analysts at the Begin Sadat Center have issued a stark warning in their latest report, asserting that Iran's recent campaign has fundamentally reshaped the threat landscape in the Middle East. The adversary is no longer content with merely intercepting drones in the desolate expanses of the desert or engaging in sporadic skirmishes along the Gaza border. Instead, it is striking at the very heart of Israel, assailing areas previously considered inviolable, the bustling centers of its cities, the collective mindset of its society, and the unwavering confidence in its economy. As the chief editor of Yediot Aharonot lamented in his column on June 28, "For decades, we have painstakingly constructed a protective wall around ourselves, the Iron Dome, our intelligence apparatus, and our diplomatic efforts. However, this wall has crumbled, and with rockets now breaching its defenses, we are confronted with the stark reality that we lack a viable Plan B." Many perceive the attack on the nuclear facility in Bushehr, occurring amidst delicate negotiations in Washington, as a pivotal misstep with devastating consequences. Defying the stance of then-American President Donald Trump, the Netanyahu administration opted for escalation, presuming that Iran would either refrain from retaliation or mount only a measured response. Reality, however, unfolded in a dramatically different fashion. Iran not only retaliated, but did so with a precision, coordination, and scale that defied all expectations. The vaunted Iron Dome system proved inadequate. Civilian evacuation procedures were demonstrably ineffective. Public services were caught completely off guard. For the first time in decades, the Israeli populace experienced a chilling realization: the state's protection is not an unconditional guarantee, but a fragile condition that can be shattered at any moment. This realization has shaken the public's faith to its core. This crisis has even penetrated the ranks of the Israel Defense Forces, igniting internal discord. Lower and mid-level commanders have begun to openly challenge the policies emanating from the General Staff. Young officers are voicing concerns that the political leadership is exploiting the army as a tool for exerting pressure, while failing to provide strategic clarity and the necessary political backing. On the ground, soldiers are reporting shortages of essential equipment, obsolete air defense systems in border regions, and a pervasive sense of moral fatigue after 3 long weeks of mobilization. The soldiers, who are the backbone of the nation's defense, feel abandoned and unsupported. Consequently, headlines that would have seemed unthinkable just a month ago are now appearing with increasing frequency in the international press: erosion of Israeli authority, security architecture collapses, the beginning of the end of regional hegemony. Within Western analytical circles, cautious discussions are emerging regarding the potential re-evaluation of long-standing alliances, especially in light of the growing influence of Gulf states, China, and even Turkey as alternative mediators in the peace process. Meanwhile, with steely resolve, Iran displays no signs of faltering. The situation is tense, and the future remains uncertain. In June 2025, Israel found itself grappling with the most significant crisis it had faced in decades, a veritable crucible forging a new reality. The Iranian ballistic strikes, targeting vital urban centers such as Tel Aviv, Bat Yam, Ramat Gan, and Rishon LeZion, had not only decimated buildings and critical infrastructure, but, more profoundly, shattered the long-held Israeli perception of invulnerability. The nation reeled from the devastating consequences: hundreds wounded, dozens tragically killed, billions of dollars in economic damage, and widespread panic gripping the populace. This calamity was a direct result of what many perceived as a colossal strategic miscalculation: the strike against an Iranian nuclear facility precisely when diplomatic negotiations were at their most delicate juncture. The fact that Iranian missiles were able to penetrate the vaunted Iron Dome defense system marked a definitive turning point, a humiliating blow to national pride. A nation that had long boasted of its impenetrable defenses was caught completely off guard, exposed and vulnerable. Consequently, the Netanyahu government found itself under intense and unrelenting criticism. News outlets were subjected to stringent censorship, and international support, once unwavering, began to wane noticeably. The ensuing capital flight, the paralysis of logistical operations, and the technological gridlock that choked Tel Aviv delivered an economic blow that was arguably as devastating as the missile strikes themselves. Conversely, according to reports from the New Arab, plans were already underway in Tehran to solidify partnerships with Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and even certain nations in Africa. President Raisi, in his recent address, proclaimed defiantly, "We have demonstrated that we will not be treated as a second-rate state. We are not a threat, we are the response." His words carried a palpable sense of resolve and a clear message of defiance to the international community. Perhaps the most unsettling aspect of this unfolding crisis was the pervasive silence. The stunned silence of Israeli society, still reeling from the initial shock, seemed reluctant to return to normalcy. The typically vibrant tourist streets of Tel Aviv lay deserted. Cafes and bars operated at severely reduced capacity. Schools and universities had partially transitioned to remote learning, reflecting a new reality of fear. The populace, it seemed, was not merely afraid of further missile attacks. They had begun to lose faith in the state's capacity to protect them, a devastating blow to national morale. A drone video capturing the ruins of a Tel Aviv skyscraper became a symbolic culmination of this grim chapter. The caption read simply, "This is how illusions end." The video rapidly went viral, garnering over 60 million views worldwide in a single day, serving as a stark visual metaphor for a political and strategic blunder that Israel might find impossible to rectify. The feeling of disillusionment was palpable. Thus, by the end of June 2025, Israel stood at a critical juncture in its history. It faced a stark choice: either to continue down the path of escalating tensions, risking a total war that could engulf the entire region, or to reevaluate its strategic position and acknowledge that the era of unilateral dominance had passed. Meanwhile, the world watched with bated breath, not to see who would ultimately prevail, but to see who could manage to survive in this new architecture of fear and vulnerability, where the promise of absolute protection, whether on land or in the skies, no longer existed. The future hung precariously in the balance, fraught with uncertainty and peril. However, the most perilous development was not merely this. For the first time, Israel was confronted with a novel and deeply unsettling reality. It wasn't just about enduring attacks on military installations anymore. Instead, the very foundations of the nation were under siege, with the enemy capable of dismantling public trust, tarnishing its hard-earned business reputation, and destabilizing its carefully constructed political equilibrium. This was a chilling paradigm shift. The illusion of absolute control, previously a cornerstone of Israeli strategic thinking, lay shattered. Consequently, the nation now faces a profound and multifaceted challenge. More than simply formulating a robust military response, Israel must undertake a comprehensive re-evaluation of its entire survival strategy. This critical reassessment is necessitated by an evolving geopolitical landscape, an era where sheer dominance no longer serves as an infallible guarantee of national security. This realization, while sobering, demands a proactive and innovative approach to ensure the continued prosperity and safety of the nation and its people. The stakes are incredibly high, and the path forward requires both strategic wisdom and unwavering resolve.